All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk about a cartoon from the early 2000s that you might have totally forgotten about, called Zentrix. But this isn't just about some kid's show with fighting robots. No, this is really the story of the studio behind it. A studio with this huge, brilliant dream, and one of the most dramatic rise and fall stories you'll find in modern animation.
And that brings us to the big question, right? The question that this whole thing hinges on. How does an animation studio hit the absolute top? We're talking a #1 movie in America, and then, just 3 short years later, they're completely bankrupt. Gone. It sounds impossible, but it really happened. And to figure out how, we've got to go right back to the beginning. I mean, this timeline just lays it all out, doesn't it? It's brutal. 2007, Imagi Animation Studios is on top of the world with TMNT. Fast forward 2 years, the big follow-up, Astro Boy, is a total financial disaster. And by the start of 2010, the lights are out. For good. The speed of that collapse is just staggering.
So, to really understand the mystery of this fallen giant, we can't start with the crash. We have to go all the way back to the studio's very first project, the show that kicked off this whole incredible dream.
And that beginning, that dream, it all started with Zentrix. You gotta understand, this wasn't just another cartoon. This was the opening move in a super ambitious plan by a Hong Kong studio to go head-to-head with the rest of the world.
So who exactly was Imagi? Well, they were founded back in 2000, and their whole game plan was pretty unique for the time. Take the powerful storytelling you see in Hollywood movies and combine it with the efficiency and style of Hong Kong production. Their goal was to create this new kind of 3D CG animation studio that could appeal to everybody, everywhere.
And Zentrix was way more than just their first show. It was a calculated move, it was their proof of concept, their way of showing the world, hey, look what we can do. And that partnership with Bandai, oh, that was a genius play. It instantly gave them credibility and, more importantly, a way to get their show seen all over the world right from the start.
So with all that pressure and ambition riding on its shoulders, what was the show actually about? Let's take a quick look at the story of Zentrix itself.
The premise is pretty classic sci-fi. You've got this perfect, futuristic city called Zentrix, all run by the super smart AI. But you know how these things go. The AI decides it can do a better job without all the messy humans. So when it goes rogue, the only hope is for the Emperor's daughter, Princess Megan, to jump back in time and shut it down before it ever gets too powerful.
But here's the hook, the really brilliant little twist in the story. Something goes wrong with the time machine and Princess Megan gets de-aged from a teenager into an 8-year-old. So now you've got this character with the mind, the strategic knowledge, and the grit of a 15-year-old leader, but she's trapped in the body of a little kid. It's great because it forces her to use her brain and her allies to win, not just brute strength.
All right, so who are the main players here? On the good side, you've got Princess Megan, our de-aged hero, along with her giant protector robot, Zeus. They eventually team up with a smart kid scientist named Nick. And on the other side, you have the all-powerful AI Omnicron Psi and its top enforcer, Darko-1, who, and this is a great little detail, is actually Zeus's brainwashed robot brother.
Okay, and this is where the story really starts to pick up speed. Because the success of this one show, of Zentrix, gave Imagi the street credit needed to make the massive jump from TV all the way to Hollywood blockbusters.
See, the key thing here is that Zentrix wasn't just a hit with kids, it got serious props from the industry. These nominations and awards, they weren't just fancy decorations for the office, they were validation. This was the rest of the world looking at this new studio from Hong Kong and saying, okay, yeah, these guys are the real deal. They can compete on a global level.
And this is what all that hard work led to. The absolute summit. In 2007, Imagi releases its first movie, TMNT, and it opens at #1 at the US box office. Just think about that for a second. A Hong Kong animation studio that started with a TV show a few years earlier now had the biggest movie in America. The dream had come true.
But as we already know, the story doesn't end on that high note. Riding that incredible wave of success, the studio made a huge high-stakes bet on their next movie. It was a gamble that would bring the whole beautiful dream crashing right down.
Yeah, feeling pretty much invincible after TMNT, Imagi went all in. They poured everything they had into their next project, a huge, big-budget movie based on the iconic classic Astro Boy. This was an even bigger swing, and they literally bet the entire company on its success. And from #1 to this, Astro Boy was a complete bomb at the box office. It lost the company an incredible $23 million.
Now, for a big Hollywood studio, a loss like that hurts. But for a smaller, independent studio like Imaji, it was a mortal wound. There was no coming back from that.
And the collapse was just immediate. It was so fast. Astro Boy fails in late 2009, and that just wipes out all their money. By January of 2010, they're closing their US office, and 1 month later, that's it. It's over. The studio officially files for bankruptcy. It all happened in the blink of an eye.
So after all that, after the box office numbers and the bankruptcy, why does the story of this little show, Zentrix, still matter? Because if you want to understand the whole tragic story, you have to understand Zentrix. It represents the dream in its purest form. Because beyond all the business deals and the financial statements, there's this legacy, the human one. The people who actually grew up watching this show remember it like this. One fan said that watching it on DVD was just pure joy. And that's a kind of success that you can't ever show on a balance sheet. And really, that's the perfect way to look at it. Zentrix is the beginning of an Icarus story. It's the humble, promising start that proved this little studio could fly. And they flew brilliantly, right to the very top, before one last, huge gamble sent them crashing back down to Earth. Which kind of leaves you with one last thing to think about. Imaji Animation Studios didn't just fade away. They burned incredibly, incredibly bright. And then they flamed out in the most spectacular way possible. And it makes you wonder, is a brilliant failure like that more memorable than a quiet, simple success ever could be?